Embark on a journey of resilience and discovery with the Back to Life podcast. Hosted by Danny Bader, this series delves into the transformative stories of individuals who have faced and overcome life's challenges. From moments of darkness to rays of hope, each episode explores the path to personal growth and fulfillment. Tune in and unlock the secrets to living a life of resilience and purpose on Back to Life.
Well, Marina, hello, and welcome to the Back to Life podcast. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How about you? Thank you for having me on.
Good, good. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this, and the readers probably are quite interested in your journey. You know, you and I have known one another for a few years, casually, and then through social media, we stay connected. And you wrote this book, A New Life, A New Menu, an almanac of belonging. And I think it is absolutely beautifully written, and it's a powerful story. And as you were telling your story, I could certainly see how it relates to me and other people as well. The book opens, the scene opens in your grandmother's kitchen. Now, why would you choose that as an opening of a book? What was going on? Tell us a little bit about that.
I never actually thought about writing a book, but at some point I felt my story would be probably relatable to many people. And starting
Mhm.
it in my grandmother's kitchen was very symbolic to me. I am Russian. We're very deep, philosophical people. But I had to remember, where did the seed of this passion for hospitality started? And it started in her kitchen. Just
Mhm.
her cooking meals, making space for people, a feeling of belonging she cultivated through her kitchen, through her
Mhm.
meals, how she invited people into her house, how she cared for me and my brother, and the love that she gave to us, also to her garden and all the neighbors. I think
Mhm.
that's why I decided it was a powerful first chapter.
I think, yeah, it certainly was. So you believe, how old were you then?
I was about six. That's where it starts. I was around 6 years old.
Right. And you believe that because you spent a lot of time with your grandmother, that was the foundation for you to say, there's something a little bit more to this whole hospitality as a profession.
I believe now that that's where the seeds started. Then, probably,
Mhm.
retrospectively, I probably didn't know. I just knew that it made me feel a certain way. It made me feel well taken care of. It made me feel
Uh,
loved. It made me feel like I belong. I had such a great memories of my grandma. She was a permanent figure of my life growing up. I spent a lot of time with her. I learned a lot from her. Now, every time I cook, I think,
mhm.
wow, how do I know how to make bread? And it's
Mhm.
innately in me from what she passed down. I think I just didn't realize it then.
Yeah. So you learned certainly how to make things in the kitchen, right? Is there
Yes,
one dish, is there one like favorite dish that you made with your grandmother?
yes, absolutely. There's one dish that brings me right back to that moment in that
Right.
kitchen is a poppy seed roulade. It's a very
Hmm.
traditional Eastern European dessert bread. And I can smell it right away. I think
Hmm.
humans have a lot of senses, but sense of smell has the strongest connection to your memory. And it
Hmm.
brings me right back into her dacha, the summer house, us sitting around drinking tea and eating the poppy seed roulade, slicing it. And my
Right.
other favorite thing or thing that brings me right back to Russia, and it's actually in some pages of my book, is dill. It's a
Hmm.
big herb that we used in almost everything. And my team sometimes makes fun of me because I use dill in a lot of things. And it
Yes.
just brings me back home.
I love it. I love it. So when you wrote this book, why write the book? What were you, I mean, certainly you're telling us, you told us wonderfully, about your journey through hospitality, but when you talk about that journey, you pull out very powerful lessons for all of us, regardless of what we do for a living. So when you wrote the book, why'd you write the book, and what are the lessons that you and I are going to talk about? As the listeners listening right now, they want to hang around because we're going to talk about boom, 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 boom. What else?
I think that I wrote this book not to be a manual on how to be successful leader or how to be successful in hospitality. That's why it's called Almanac because it has seasonality and up and down. But
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it to show people that you can accept defeat, you can falter, and you can still rebuild. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what industry you are in or what you do. It is
Mm-hmm.
as a human experience. I look through the lens of hospitality because that's my journey, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be specifically this industry. It's your experience of accepting who you are, is being able to rebuild, rebound, muscle through, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just make mistakes or being kind to yourself doesn't come naturally. And I think
Right.
there are so many great books about leadership, about life, but none of them are as philosophical, for the lack of better word, or as
Mm-hmm.
deep as I wanted my book to be.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to see themselves in my experience and allow themselves to accept that maybe not everything always works out or going to be perfect, but it's how you
Mm-hmm.
look at it and how do you recover or rebound.
I love that. Yeah, that's the message is accept defeat, which is resilience, right? Rebuild is resilience and vision, like what do we create for ourselves? And then always the theme throughout there is how do I just feel that I belong? Wherever I am, whoever I'm with. And, there's a great theme in there that you have as well. We'll get into this. How do I just feel that I belong with myself? That I'm okay with being Marina and I'm okay with being Danny. So why don't you tell, because I think some of those lessons were forged as you moved into your teenage years and you had a little bit of movement from home up to Maine and home and up to Maine. Tell the listener what you did there kind of real quick.
Yeah, I grew up in a military family, so I've moved quite a bit from Germany to Azerbaijan to Lithuania with my grandmother. I went through different changes of seasons in my life.
Hmm.
And when I first came to US, I was on my third year in college. The reason I came here is to learn a little bit more about hospitality, advanced hospitality for the lack of better word, but
Hmm.
nothing prepared me for it because I
Hmm.
thought I knew everything and I'm excited, I'm gonna go. And I remember distinctly the moment I stepped my foot outside of the New Yorker hotel into the city and I saw a sea of people and I was baffled because I didn't speak English. I could comprehend a little bit of it, but I couldn't find the signs or read them or know what I need to do. That
Hmm.
cultural shock just was a wave on me. And
Right.
then I also remember the second time in New York after a summer in Maine and meeting wonderful people and learning a little bit more language and
Hmm.
experiencing 5 months of really interesting hospitality, how
Hmm.
I looked at New York differently. It was an exciting place, a place that provided so many experiences, the smells, the taste, the textures, the people.
Hmm.
Everything was contrast to what I've experienced the first time.
Initially, yeah. So you get
Yeah,
off the plane, you get off the train in New York City, you step out, and there's probably the emotions of uncertainty, right? Fear, a little
for
bit, and
sure.
then you go experience those 5 months up in Maine, and then you come back to New York, and then you say, "Wow, this is cool. This is exciting. There's a lot of possibility here." So if somebody's in that situation right now, maybe they're experiencing some fear or some uncertainty about where they're going in their career or relationship or something and they go, oh my gosh, I would love to get more to the other side where it's exciting and there's potential. What would you offer to them right now? What are some things they need to do?
I think, for myself, I've searched for different tools to manage that
Hmm.
excitement and fear sometimes.
Hmm.
Obviously, there are millions of writers that help you. And I think Mel Robbins was one of the first people that said adrenaline in your stomach from fear is the same adrenaline as when you get excited. So I try to think of
Yes.
fun things and excitement that waits on the other side of fear. Um,
Yes.
and then also accepting things as they are, which is not very
Mhm.
easy for me because I am Russian and we are very rigid, very blunt, muscling through people. So
Yes. Yes.
that duality of my personality certainly
Uh,
contradicts itself sometimes.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's cool. That's a good way to put it. And I certainly love Mel, and I've heard her say that before, that in your body, right, physiologically, or uncertainty and fear has the same as I'm excited about this. So I think for people listening, it's really when that shows up, it's what are you saying to yourself? The uncertainty and the fear is like, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. What if it doesn't work out? What if they don't like me? Or, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to meet some great people and I'm probably going to make some mistakes. And 4, 5, 6 months from now, I'm going to be so much better as a person. There's so much growth in there. So I think that's really important, kind of how you frame that. You described the story a little bit of exile and arrival. What did it feel like? Because you went back and forth from home to Maine, and then at some point you made a transition down to Florida full time, right?
Yes.
And how
I
old were
think
you then?
probably 21. So I moved here
Okay.
when I was well, maybe 22. Don't quote me on that. I moved here when I
Mhm.
was 19. Or I came here first time when I was 19, and then at 21, I've decided
Mhm.
this is the country I would like to move to because there
Yeah.
are a lot more opportunities for me. I think I can learn, and it wasn't a very easy decision because I was abandoning everything I knew, my language, my culture, my family,
Mhm.
for the promise of better future for myself and
Mhm.
for a future full of knowledge and
Mhm.
discoveries and excitement. It
Mhm.
certainly was not an easy decision. I remember the moment I knew that I'm leaving and I had to say goodbye to my mom and my grandma,
Yeah.
knowing that I'm not going to see them as often
Mhm.
and miss a lot of time with my family.
Yeah.
So I think decisions like that are never easy.
Mhm.
You just weigh in and say, okay, what do I see? As you said, sometimes you could envision your future, and it may not be 5 years, it may be just 2 months from now. How do I see myself? Being
Mhm.
able to visualize what you're going for is
Mhm.
kind of what allowed me to leave, but it wasn't easy. It still
Right.
isn't at times.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's tough when you leave, certainly, because it's all around your values, right? So you had a conflicting value of, growth and some value around success. And then you also had the value of family. So it's
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I can't necessarily have both of these right now. So do you do anything with in terms of your values now when you have to make a decision? When you have to make a tough decision, how do you do that now?
I think as you grow and as you progress in my job or in my career, I always look at what I've learned throughout the last 27 years being in this
Right.
industry. Have I experienced this before? What did I learn from that? And how can I use the tools or the instances from the past to help me make decision now? And I
Right.
think it's important to meet people where they are at.
Mm,
Sometimes people just want to be heard. You don't necessarily have to provide all the answers, and you don't have to make decisions on the spot. You could give it time, meet people where they are, allow them to be human because no matter what, we are all experiencing life and from our own perspective. I'm the center of my universe, you're the center of yours. So your perspective is different than mine, and maybe just allowing the other person to give their perspective and give
mhm,
your perspective to them and meet in the middle. Sometimes that's what the best case scenario is.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's pretty good for sure. You write in here that service isn't performance. So when I read and you were up in Maine and you were learning how to really work a room and serve a room, in a fine dining environment, it says service isn't performance, it's humanity. And that's such a powerful reframe. What has life and hospitality taught you about dignity, empathy, and, well, they're both important, and the human spirit?
Well, I think hospitality is such a interesting industry because you're working with the guests, people that come into your life and you may never see them again, but you're also working with people in the back of the house, the front of the house, the team that you manage or the part of the team that you are. And I
Hmm.
think the lesson of dignity for me came from when I washed dishes with our team in Maine, because a lot of people don't understand how important that job is in a restaurant. Because if you
Yeah.
don't have a team that can wash dishes, you won't have plates, glasses, silverware to serve in the dining room. But I think
Yeah.
respect for those positions are so important. And that's why I believe that being in my position now as a director of food and beverage, I
Yeah.
have done every job in the food industry because I wanted to, because I
Right.
needed to be humbled and to understand what it takes. And I think the stewards are the heart of the operation, but
Yeah.
the way they did it, the team that I worked with, the dignity lesson came from there. And then
Hmm.
I also think empathy comes from, I'll tell you a quick story. I had
Sure.
a guest at the host stand and she was really upset and she was yelling at my hostess. And it's not in the book, I just thought about it.
No,
Um,
I love stories.
I came over and I said, I'm so sorry, may I assist you? And she was just really upset because she didn't get the coffee that she wanted. So I asked her to step aside because we had a line out of the door for breakfast. I said, I'm so sorry, what happened? And she said, well, I wanted a cup of coffee. They sent me to a coffee shop. Um, and then in the coffee shop, they said, no, you need to go back to the restaurant. She's like, I just want a cup of coffee. And she started crying. And,
Hmm.
I didn't know how to handle it at that moment, but then I gathered myself and I said, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? I'm gonna grab you a cup of coffee. Let's sit down and just, relax. I'll take you outside. You can just sit on a rocker and enjoy. Come to
Hmm.
find out, she came to the hotel, and this was supposed to be a trip with her husband,
Hmm.
to celebrate him, battling cancer, and 2 weeks prior to this trip, he passed away.
Oh man.
And she wasn't mad about coffee. She wasn't mad about the fact that we were not providing her something. She just needed to be seen. And
Hmm.
I was able to create a guest for life because I met her where she was. I,
Hmm.
made sure that she felt comfortable. We sent a
Hmm.
nice little amenity to her room, a
Yeah.
thoughtful amenity where every staff member signed a card saying, you know, we're here for you. This is your home away from home. You're always welcome. If you need
Hmm.
anything, find us. And that to me was probably the biggest lesson of empathy because you don't
Hmm.
ever know what other person is going
Oh,
through.
yes.
Just because they're yelling about coffee, the
Yeah. And as
tears
you
are
said,
deeper.
yeah, that's an amazing story. I'm just making some notes here as we wrap up. But I think that is absolutely so true in life, and in belonging and in leadership and all these things that you and I are touching on tonight. It really is that just to have the awareness that we have no idea what the hell people are dealing with in life. When they
No.
cut us off in traffic, when they yell for a cup of coffee, when we just don't know what they're dealing with. So anybody listening right now, I think it's really important for all of us to kind of hold that awareness, right? And again, you're not going to let people take advantage of you in situations, but you first have to just come, as you did, to say, pull her aside and say, hold on, I'm going to take care of this for you. Sometimes you grab their arm, maybe you put your arm around them. I mean, I'm like a big physical toucher, and,
Me
sometimes
too.
like, yeah, sometimes people go, oh, but now
Yeah.
I'll just warn them and say, I'm a hugger. And then they'll say, me too, or I won't. But sometimes I think, especially in a situation like that, and we'll talk about the human spirit because I think empathy is moving over into that right now. That's your human spirit. That's the essence of you, the intangible essence of you as a human being, connecting to the intangible essence of another human being. It has nothing to do with where you go to church or where you don't go to church. There's just an energy in all of us, man. And sometimes we have to just connect that with the other person. The story of you as a leader too, kind of doing the dishwashing and all. I laugh because years ago I was a bartender for 20 some years. And I just loved it, and I love the hospitality, and that's why I love working with Marriott's and Ritz Carltons and all the hotels. But I remember I was running a sports bar, and it was like the opening night or the second night, and the dish room was out of control. And I looked to my two young managers, the assistant managers, and I said, "All right, you guys take care of the front of the house." And I went back and I took my shirt and tie off, and I just had a t-shirt on or whatever. And the staff was running, and they were great, but they would look back like double, start laughing at me, But I got to tell you, and I don't know that I did it consciously then. I just saw where something was needed, but it was after that they still had a respect for you. And I think it even grew because you were with them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're in that leadership role, and oftentimes, right, leaders don't do a lot of things. And that's okay. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to support you, give you vision, give you direction, give you support. But yeah, that was an interesting story when I thought and I hadn't thought of my story in a long time. So the human spirit, how do you use that to connect with yourself, with your own spirit? What do you do to connect with that? And how do you make sure that your spirit is available to other people to connect?
I think, I touch on that a little bit in my book is
Yep.
the fact that hospitality, could take a lot out of you. It's a very human-centric industry. So
Sure.
being able to protect your own heart and still share it with other people is a balance. And it's not always that I was able to have that balance. Sometimes maybe I gave too much at work and I couldn't bring it home. And that's part of my story, right? Finding that balance.
Sure.
And now with industry too, everything is you always think about mortality or ending of some sort because guests come and go, events finish. It's a very changing environment at all times. So it allowed me to accept the fact that something always comes to an end, that there
Hmm.
is definitely a finality to certain things, but it doesn't have to be scary. It could
Hmm.
be a celebration of, wow, I achieved another milestone. Oh, these people had a great experience and they had so much fun and they will always remember this. Or these
Hmm.
people are here to celebrate life and they're grieving and we are here to help them.
Hmm.
For me, I think, I always search again. I'm Russian. We are very philosophical people, and I'm no different than most of us. As I said,
Hmm.
Dostoevsky writes very deeply, and that's my favorite
Oh yeah, yeah,
author.
yeah, yeah.
It's all reflecting, and you're talking about human spirit and how all of the life kind of has to do with finality and sense of belonging. And to me, belonging is not a destination.
Hmm.
It's a ongoing process. You could
Yeah.
have your tribe, people that make you feel at home and make you feel like you belong. You may have an industry or a circle of people that allow you to feel that. Your family gives you a piece of that.
Hmm.
I am also very much into Japanese philosophies like kintsugi and wabi-sabi, accepting the things the way they are, accepting yourself, knowing
Hmm.
that imperfection is perfect in its own way. So I
Hmm.
think I kind of teeter in a lot of different philosophical realms to find peace for myself. And I
I
think a lot
love
of
it.
people maybe
I love
relate.
it. So, do you do that because you're right? I mean, the hospitality, well, everybody you hear about now so often talks about burnout, right? And the hospitality industry is probably at the top of that list. And there's a lot of other jobs as well. I'll often talk to people and say, well, burnout, they say I need more balance. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And they said, well, I need to get healthier. I need to spend more time reading again. I need to spend more time with my family. So what they do is when they describe balance, they're actually talking about the different values that they're neglecting. So I always say, listen, you don't need to find balance because it ain't lost. Just what are your values and what actions do you need to begin to take to live more with them? So live according to your values, and then balance is just what shows up. So what are some things that you do, or what would you offer to people? Like when you come home and you've just worked a day. I mean, you had a day. It was budget season and groups were in the hotel.
Admittedly.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. And the food and beverage was going crazy, F&B. What do you do to kind of get back to calm, to center, to say, okay, I belong, everything's good? How do you kind of renew? What do you do?
Well, I think it's daily practices of different things. At work, I actually started, and it's funny, but a couple of years ago, I started little dances, and it's just 30 seconds of fun little dance. And now
Right?
I get everyone from different departments to do a small little funny TikTok
Sure.
dance
You got to
because it
shake it out
relaxes
too, right?
you. It just settles you. It breaks the focus, right? It breaks it a little bit. It gives you refreshed idea. Of course, walking is really good.
Sure.
I love spending time with my son and cooking. I bake a lot. It's
Hmm.
certainly my thing. It
Hmm.
relaxes me. And I
Yeah.
think everybody has their own little things. I
Hmm.
drink a lot of tea, but that's Russian and maybe just sitting down and drinking a cup of
I
tea.
guess I got a little
Um,
ginger lemon right here.
yeah, I have tropical green
Hmm.
and making a little scone. So fresh bread makes me very happy. Again, brings me back to my
Yeah.
childhood and my grandma. But there is different things. Some people, as you said, oh, I need more. I think balance is attainable in different facets. Balance
Mm.
looks different for every person.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have balance with
Yeah.
a job. You just have to accept that this is where I'm at right now.
Sure.
How do I then make up some of that time later?
Hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I've struggled with that throughout my journey because I am a workaholic. I love my job brings me so much joy. My profession brings me so much joy. I love new people and I love spending time with them. But with that comes a lot of emotional energy that I may have n not left for my family. So I try
Hmm.
to be mindful of it now,
Hmm.
doing little things. And I like to read a little bit, but I'm not going to sit down and read the whole book. If I
Hmm.
feel like it, I'll do it. If I don't, I don't. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
watch a funny show. I watch Golden Girls all the time because it makes me
Oh
laugh.
yeah. They'll make you laugh, right? Well, that's the thing too when you talk about um the little dances and all. I'm sure as soon as you start to do it, people laugh. And
Yes,
when we're laughing, you got to think our brain's going, wait, what the hell's going on here? Why are we laughing? Everything must be good. So, like you say, it kind of shifted your focus maybe off a more tense situation. So, I think it's important for people just to know where do they need to go? What do they need to do? Who do they need to be with that renews their energy? Because too
100%.
often they're just, as you said, they're just expending their energy. And they're, as you said, you're not staying aware of, okay, these are the things I need to do to kind of get some of that energy back. I think that's great. I want to just read a little bit because you talked about rebuild. And the book is just so wonderfully written. I mean, the way that it flows and the words and everything, I just enjoyed it so much. But
Thank you. Well, I did have editor Courtney who was very patient with me. English is my
good.
second language, so she was very helpful in teaching me how to be more eloquent.
Yeah, well, you and Courtney did a great job. I've certainly had editors, or an editor, Sue, who does the same thing for me. She helps me. And the worst thing with Sue is when we're working on a manuscript and she'll just have pages that are cut, and I'll be
Yeah,
like, "What? What?
20%
What
gone.
are you doing?" And now she says, "Danny, does this move the story forward?" And the first couple times I'd always laugh and say, I don't know, but I think it's brilliant writing. And she says it's not. And then we would laugh. I would say, all right, let's cut it. Um, but you met somebody back in Maine a long time ago, and you and I spoke about her name is Meg, and it turns out she's still one of your best friends or best friends. But when she said this, we talked about it at night, the white noise of the inn fading. Meg spoke of her road to this junction, how she decided to change the course of her life. She wasn't some coddled dreamer. She was a person who looked at the world and made a choice not to be its victim, but its mason, right? Which builds things, strong walls. She didn't simply want to live, she wanted to shape her existence, chisel out a path of the raw material of her own determination. And then it says, her work ethic was really driven by purpose. When I read that, I thought, man, that is just so wonderfully written and so powerful for anybody that you can't be in what I call the valley of the victim, where it's everybody else's fault and there's blame and there's no accountability and there's no momentum and there's no path forward. So what does that mean to you, or when you were with Meg and you saw her just kind of going after what she wanted to create? Do you think a lot of people do that, or do you think people have trouble with that?
I think it's probably 50-50. Some people are very much determined and they know what they want and they maybe they don't know how to get there, but they want to get there. And it's
Right.
the willpower and innate ability to say, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to be the victim. And then
Hmm.
some people may be not able to see that in themselves and in the future.
Hmm.
As you said, Meg is still my best friend. She got her doctorate in English. She's a
That's
published
great.
author. She's, very active in the community, always talks, defends people that may be not heard by others. She's a champion of change in many ways. And she came from a single mom from Boston, very, very difficult upbringing with a lot of different things, but she decided that's not going to define who she is. And I think
I
that's
love it.
what drew me to her is I saw that incredibly strong person that said, "No, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to do what I need to do to be successful in my life, and I'm going to do it with tender and care and grit."
Mhm.
And as I said, we're still friends, and sometimes I'll call her and I say, "Wow, this was really difficult." And she gives me perspective, which is
Mm,
important to have people in your life that can give you perspective, maybe smack you around a little bit sometimes and
sure,
pick you
sure,
up
sure.
when you just listen, you know? And to
Yeah.
me, that's my tribe. That's the people that got me through very difficult periods of my time.
I love it. Yeah. So a couple of themes then as we're talking here, I just want to stop and slow down the audience and just make sure that they're getting this. As we've talked about your journey, right, from home and Maine and then down to Florida into your, the career success that you have now. And now we're talking about Meg, right, when she came from a very tough upbringing, she just failed to be a victim. She failed to accept being a victim, right? She didn't go to that mentality. A couple of things as we're talking about these journeys for the audience, you hear in there the vision, right? Both Marina and Meg saw, okay, this is where I'm going. This is what I want to create. So that's very, very important. Then, though, because many people can say that, and what do you want? Here's what I want. Here's what I want. And then the other part, though, that you've talked about, and you talked about Meg as well, is what are you saying to yourself when the difficult times show up? So it's really important for anybody listening right now. If you feel like you're struggling and you're not getting to where you want to get as fast as you want to get, really slow down and go ahead up in that head and take a listen to that voice there and just think as Marina said, sometimes you might have to go to a friend, to your tribe, and kind of let them smack you upside the head a little bit. I think that's so important. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
that's why I think we all should have some people in our life that are able to be blunt with us and maybe
Mhm.
level set. And then some people that sometimes you're not looking for
Right.
answers, you're not looking for advice, you just want to be heard. And
Right.
even if it doesn't make sense to them, to you it does at this moment.
Yeah.
Having people like that, and I'm very grateful and fortunate to have many friends and colleagues that can provide that shoulder to me, and
Yeah.
I do that in return for them because it's important that you are there for people as well. That's what
Oh,
why.
sure is. Yeah, oh, it sure is. You got to lead with love and you got to be love as well. So that's a good point too to the audience. Just make sure that as you're moving fast, you may go, okay, Danny, I hear what you're saying, and Marina, but I'm in a pretty good place right now. I'm feeling pretty good about things. All right, slow down, take a breath, and then look around to people in your life, and maybe somebody needs you more than you're showing up right now, which is really important. I think that's a good point. This is great. We could talk for a long time, and let's kind of move towards the close. This one here, I talked a belonging because it says this, and I want everybody to listen because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about vision, we're talking about life, and it's towards it is the last chapter right before acknowledgments. And it says, whether in leadership in daily life or in the simple act of being present for another human being, choose to welcome, to uplift, to create a something meaningful. Recognize that hospitality is not focused on serving, but on seeing. Understanding that regardless of where we come from, we all seek the same thing: to be acknowledged, to be received with open hands, and to belong. So talk a little bit about that paragraph because I think that really kind of gets to the essence of what the book is all about and because of what you're all about. So how does that relate to people? What can they do to understand that regardless of where we come from, we all seek the same thing: acknowledgement, receive with open hands, and love, and to belong.
Yeah, I think ultimately, as a human being,
Hmm.
you want to have a sense of belonging. It could be with community, it could be in your job, in your family, and meeting people where they are really important. I think sometimes we become a little bit more transactional in our relationship, in the connections that we make, versus
Hmm.
just stopping and saying, "Hey, I'm here. I see you and I receive you, and I'm here for you." And it doesn't, the reason I wrote this book through the lens of hospitality is because it's part of who I am. This industry became part of my identity, and it helped me through the
Hmm.
time in my life where I was questioning who I am or why is this happening to me, and maybe struggling. It helped me see that ultimately we all just want to be seen and understood.
Hmm.
And in hospitality, we provide that space for people, maybe for a few minutes for a small meal or interaction, but it
Hmm.
makes such a big difference to really listen and
Hmm.
meet people. and care and acknowledge that we're existing in the same realm. We're
Yeah.
experiencing this life in this moment together, and I see you.
Hmm.
And I think that's the most powerful thing. Again,
Yeah.
as I said, I'm very fortunate to have had people in my life that did that for me. So I want
Yeah.
to make sure that I do it for other people as well. And
Yeah.
it's not always perfect, but it certainly happens more often than not.
Yeah, I know. I understand. That's definitely the case, right? We also talked in here about just a rhythm. There was a quote in here that said there's a rhythm to it. I guess when you were learning to work the room, and I think that this kind of ties to what you just spoke about, and also to life as we move towards wrapping up. It says there's a rhythm to it. Once you get the hang of it, it's easy. It's simply knowing where everything goes. And that was a quote that was talking about serving in the dining room. How does that relate to life and for our listeners? Simply knowing where everything goes. What do you mean by that?
And I think life has rhythm, right? That's why I find so much joy in small dances because it has a rhythm. And
Hmm.
that rhythm is not always fast or slow. You know when to slow down, you know when to excel. It could be different kind of rhythm.
Hmm.
Different music offers different rhythms, but knowing where everything goes allows you to accept life as it is. And
Hmm.
it goes back to me to Wabi Sabi. It's kind of accepting the flow of life and how um, imperfect is perfect in its way. And
Hmm.
continuously, it's not always going to be amazing, but it's also not always going to be difficult. You just
Hmm.
have to go with it.
Yeah.
And, that's why I chose the word almanac as well. Some
Hmm.
people said, well, I don't even know what it means or it's a difficult word, but I really love it because to me, it's seasons. Your life is a season. It could be sunny and wonderful. And then comes winter and it's everything is dormant, but it doesn't mean it's dead. It's just the resting. It's resting to prepare you for spring when you bloom again and you become anew and you experience life very different. And
Hmm.
autumn, you kind of, your leaves are falling down and maybe you become a little bit more mature or
Hmm.
wise and you find different things about yourself and the world. And you continue in that rhythm every year, right? There's four
Hmm.
seasons for a reason. And I think our life is kind of the same way.
I love that. I love that that's how you use the term almanac because that's it. Appreciate the good times, embrace the struggles and the barren times. And then, as you come out of those and spring comes and your growth is obvious, just lean into those. I think that's great. I really think it's great. What else? I have one more closing part of the book I'd like to read. And my question is always, what else would you like to offer our listeners? And you just did a wonderful job right there. So would you like to offer any PS to the whole explanation? Any footnote to the explanation of Almanac as we wrap up?
No, I just think if the listeners do read the book, I hope they find a piece of themselves. And even if one person, actually two people already told me that it really made a difference for them in
Hmm.
accepting their own selves and
Hmm.
accepting that we could be imperfect.
Hmm.
And I think that I encourage people to read my book because
Hmm.
it hopefully will allow them to mirror their own life and accept certain parts of it and realize that we're all human. We just have a human experience together.
That's it. They're all just walking one another home, right?
Yes, exactly.
I love it. So where are you now? Tell folks where you are. You're director of food and beverage, right?
Yes,
Where are you? In case
at the
anybody's
Don
down there, they can
Cesar, the Pink Palace,
the Pink Palace, and that's located in
St. Petersburg, Florida.
St. Petersburg. Okay, I was down there in February or March. I wasn't at your hotel. I was at another one, but I'll have to keep that in mind if I get down there. And you have a website, right?
Yes, it's marinabaronas.com.
Okay, that sounds great. We'll put a link in the notes to the show.
Thank
So
you.
I would say, let me just read, and this will quite kind of be my voice and Marina's voice in the words that she wrote as we wrap up here. And she says at the end, and to you, the reader, thank you for taking a seat at my table. May these words feed something brave and tender in you. And may you remember your story is sacred, your presence is enough, you belong. So, Marina, it was absolutely wonderful to read your book and to connect with you again and to have you on the podcast. So, I appreciate it, and I'll look forward to our paths crossing again sometimes. You're doing great work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and I thoroughly enjoyed our time together.
All right. Right on. Me too. Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.